I'm Jim Couri. You're probably wondering why I'm here and why I'm doing this. I thought a lot about doing this for quite a while. I want everybody to know that I became involved in Scamraiders about 2 years ago when I was approached by a couple of guys who know a lot about computers that I didn't know, but they knew I knew a lot about corruption and bad guys and problems that people would encounter, and wanted to ask my assistance in working with them to form a website that would be geared to helping people help themselves out of scams, swindles, and corruption. I wasn't sure I was willing to do it, but after my having direct experience, firstly as a little boy from the age of 5 in Brooklyn, learning a great deal about court corruption from guys that would come around my dad's and mother's home, who were the boss men of Brooklyn and New York, who really ran the town in terms of how judges were selected, why they were selected, and what they were supposed to do when they were supposed to do it. Because, believe it or not, it's the kingmakers that tell these people what to do, not the law, not the law books. Sad as it is, those are the facts. I began to think about what these people suggested I become involved in, which ultimately has become Scamraiders. I want to first thank everybody who's involved in Scamraiders for the terrific job they've done in helping many people over the past 3.5 months, which is the existence of Scamraiders. I'm a $1 a year consultant, and I'm only participating in it because I want to try to give back to the public what I've learned before it's too late. You should know that I do have health issues, and they are somewhat serious. I've decided to do this tape because I want people to know what's really going on in these courts, and want people to really understand how bad it is. You may want to ponder, what's worse, a mafia hitman or a corrupt judge? Now don't answer that so fast, because a corrupt judge can ruin your life and ruin it where it's never going to be repaired. They can ruin your children, they can ruin your relationships with your wife, they can steal your money, they can steal your liberty. And that's a horrible thing to think about when these people are put in there in the feeling that you're walking into a courtroom and that courtroom says, "In God we trust." That's sort of idealistic, because in fact it's really not in God we trust. It's in big bucks we trust. The big problem is, and I want to intervene and say one thing at this time, that there are good judges. There are honorable judges. The problem is the bad apples spoil the whole barrel. The worst problem is that you have many corrupt lawyers that are willing to go to the old boys club in the back room, the cigar chomping guys that I lived with when I was a kid. And then I learned more about this with my pal Roy Cohen, who I knew for many, many years until he passed away. And I saw firsthand what went on in these courts in New York. Now I want everyone to know that I'm not speaking about federal court, I'm speaking about state courts. The problem in state courts is judges are put in there because they're fingered to be put in by who knows who. Unlike in the federal jurisdiction, judges go through a whole vetting process, through the Senate, through the House, and through proper investigation. In New York, judges can be handpicked by the old boys club, just like Boss Tweed, or just like Johnny Cruz, who ran Brooklyn in the 1940s, and they're there, and they got to do the bidding of what the big boys say. The unfortunate thing about it is these people have to do what they're told to do. And when it comes to the law is like rubber. It can be malleable like a rubber band. And these judges won't follow the law when a fix is in. What they'll do is they will follow what they're told to follow. Now, I've had some real personal life experience, not only from what I learned from Johnny Cruz in the 1940s when I was a kid, and into the 1970s and 80s with Roy, and with knowing Judson Morehouse, who got into trouble because of his problems with the Playboy Club, and Hugh Hefner, I've seen it all. The tip of the iceberg of all of this is the corrupt lawyers who will do anything they have to do to win a case. It's not only money, it's custody, it's property, it's real estate, it's stock. It's just pure unadulterated swindles. And when they get a judge in their pocket, they know how to squeeze it. I personally experienced situations only over the past 4 or 5 years where I was involved in litigation involving a rather small apartment. But the apartment building was owned by a lawyer by the name of George Pavia. This is a man who was unscrupulous, who, when he learned that I was trying to seek rent stabilization, pulled out all stops to deprive me of my legal rights. Rather than go into the details of this man's behavior and lack of same, you should go on to Scamraiders and see exactly what this person has done. How he manipulated the courts and the system to rob what was legitimately a right that I and other people in the building had, but he finagled his way through by corrupting the court. The court actually rewrote the law on what I was accused of was being a nuisance for writing letters to this man who abused my wife, who abused me, who had his dog wandering around, a German Shepherd, day and night, engaging in just horrific behavior. The judge that handled that case turned her back on the law books, to give this guy his rights that he wasn't entitled to. The rights were entitled to be that that building was rent stabilized. All of that said, I have decided to provide Scamraiders with a historical background of the corruption and the horrific behavior of judges and courts in the state of New York, as I've learned it from the 1940s until last week. And Scamraiders is planning to put together a book called Conspiracy at 60 Center, a stacked deck at the courthouse. I'm hoping that all of you who have had court experiences will read it. And I'm hoping that all of you who have had court experiences will go onto the site and take a look at the case histories that have been outlined on Scamraiders. Because when you walk into a courtroom, you want to be armed with this experience and this knowledge. It's really no different than when you watch David Copperfield, the magician, make the Statue of Liberty disappear. It's a trick. It looks great, but once you know the trick, you know how it's done. There are tricksters all over the courthouse. Once you walk in there, you must be sure that you're protected. And you must be sure that a contract hasn't been made by your adversary to beat you. Because if that's happening, you're going to lose no matter what. You can't play in a poker game with a stacked deck against you. You're going to lose each time. As they say, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, hoping to get a different result. The only way we're going to get a different result is if we clean house. Now, I understand that State Senator Sampson has started a task force in looking into court corruption. I wish him well. I've sent him some material. I hope from the bottom of my heart that Senator Sampson will really go into this and do so correctly and do so with vigor. Because if it's not done, our very system is really headed for head-on collision. I want to thank all of you for listening to me for a few moments.